everyone, welcome back to the Looney Bin. My name is Looney and welcome to my new shipping in video where I go over what the shipping community was like for many different franchises in anime, video game, and manga, as well as many other forms of entertainment. Now in this shipping in video, we're going to go over the shipping community in one of the more popular anime slash manga series of all time. This anime and manga debuted in 2001 and became a huge success over in the West. I'm talking about North America, Mexico, Europe, North America, South America, and it really helped popularize anime in that section of the world, to the point that now everyone who really likes anime now probably started off with this anime when they were younger. And this anime was part of the big three alongside One Piece and Bleach. That's right, I'm going to go over the shipping community of one of the more popular and beloved franchises of all time, Naruto by Masashi Kishimoto. Now, the shipping community for Naruto was, well, just like any other shonen series that had multiple different chances of different ships becoming canon, was hectic. It was a war. It was a shipping war of wars. In fact, I will probably argue that Naruto essentially created the shipping war that really delved into a lot of shonen series that you know today. So yeah, it really, I think, became such a huge war that it really just kind of just created these shipping wars that you now see in a lot of anime and manga. Now, that of course is my own opinion. You can have your own opinion about which series actually did that. But I think Naruto definitely, provided a lot of that hecticness and chaos that shipping wars are now a part of. And Naruto was very popular during the 2000s because it was part of the big three alongside, like I said, One Piece and Bleach, right? And in Naruto, essentially, there was a lot of people who enjoyed a lot of the characters, and thus a lot of the ships that some of the characters are involved in. Now, before we get into and in more depth to what the shipping community like was in Naruto, I like to, in these videos, tell you what I preferred in the series as a shipper myself, because I want to give you at least context about what I saw, what I feel, and just based on what my shipping preference, what I saw within the shipping community through my own lenses. Whether or not you agree with the ship that I rooted for in Naruto, that's up to you, and that's perfectly fine, right? That's perfectly fine, but I'm going to try to go into the shipping community, try to be as biased as non-biased as possible, I should say. Sorry about that. But yeah, so in Naruto during its big run, I actually was a Naruto Sakura shipper, right? For the most part, I enjoyed the idea that Naruto should get with somebody that he really likes, right? I think that if you have a crush on somebody during this time when I was like a teenager, actually, I thought that Naruto being with the person that he really liked, which was Sakura in the story, I thought that they should have been together, right? I think that was where like a lot of the simplistic shipping ideas came from for me in terms of my early days of being a shipper. But I really enjoyed like their dynamic and really thought that they will end up together, right? Especially after that one chapter, but I'm not going to go over in case you haven't seen the story. But I was a Naruto Sakura shipper. However, as the story continued and I started to lose a lot of interest in Naruto because I did not like how the story was progressing to the Great Ninja War and stuff like that, which of course is my own opinion. You could gladly disagree with me saying that it slowly mellowed down at least in my personal interest in the story. I stopped caring about shipping because I also noticed as I got older, when I started to analyze shipping a lot more, differently, I noticed that Kishimoto was not the greatest writer for romance. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, so if anyone wants to correct me on this, I even believe that Kishimoto said that romance writing was not his strongest suit. So, and for me, as I continued, reading through and rereading it, I could see why he would say that. I wasn't a big fan of the way he wrote some of the romances in Naruto. But again, that's my own opinion. And when Naruto ended, I accepted the ships regardless of how much I was a Naruto Sakura shipper, because at the end of the day, I lost interest in Naruto anyway. But that was my personal experience in terms of shipping in Naruto, and everyone else has their own different experience. And I don't want you to feel like I'm devaluing your experience or devaluing what ship you like. That's not what I'm trying to do here. Just give you my perspective and to give you at least some sort of like context to like why I'm saying certain things in this video, where it focuses specifically on what the shipping community was like, not which ship was supposed to win or why the ships won whatsoever, right? And just to give you hindsight into what the shipping community was like during Naruto's run. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about like what the shipping community was like in Naruto. In Naruto, there were 4 major ships that really were part of that big shipping war that really Naruto kind of like revolutionized in terms of how other communities would act, essentially. And those 4 ships were Naruto Hinata, Naruto Sakura, Sakura and Sasuke, and then finally Naruto and Sasuke. Now, 3 straight ships and 1 yaoi ship really created so much chaos because a lot of these ships conflicted with other ships, right? They conflicted with each other. The only one that was slightly different was Naruto Hinata, because Hinata was, at the time, a supported character and not part of the main trio between Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke, right? And, you know, she would get involved in a lot of the conflict because Naruto conflicted with Naruto Sasuke and Naruto Sakura ships, right? But that's where a lot of the beef, a lot of where the shipping wars actually were a part of. Because during this time, a lot of people really wanted to see which of the main characters were going to end up together. You have 3 straight ships as well as 1 yaoi ship. Now, most people really tried very hard to try to deny the idea that a yaoi ship would be as successful as, or, you know, have the biggest chance of being canon than the straight ships. I personally disagree. I thought Naruto and Sasuke had a really good chance. But then I realized that shonen series technically never do yaoi ships or yuri ships to that degree and make them canon unless they're like really backed around supporting characters. But there are exceptions to this type of rule, right? But essentially, they were all at each other's throats because they all conflicted with each other, and they were beefing with each other, calling each other's names, trying to prove to each other with evidence, with color spreads, with like just some minor merch stuff to try to prove to each other that their ship is canon. This is part of the formula that eventually developed in a lot of other ship communities after Naruto, right? And a lot of the things that people use as evidence, you know, whether you use merch as evidence is up to you, but usually I don't see merch as like really hardcore evidence for anything. Regardless, the shipping war that existed in Naruto was between these 4 ships. They constantly battled, they constantly argued with each other, to the point where like other members that were not in the shipping community got annoyed by shippers. And that's usually how most shipping communities are. We tend to try and be respectful, but we get a little too chaotic and force other people who are not part of the shipping community to start hating us, to start seeing us as like lower than them in terms of like being a fan of Naruto. And that can happen with almost any community when they get a little too excited, a little too chaotic. But Naruto and the shipping community kind of did that a lot, and it caused so much more friction with other members of the community, right? But those 4 ships were really the biggest part of why so many people did not like shipping community or Naruto and many other communities later on, right? But again, shipping wars will happen because when you trying to vouch and trying to like claim that a ship is canon, people are going to get upset. People are going to want to, you know, debate against you, get into arguments. And when some ships tend to do is that when they know they're losing or like they feel like they're being threatened of their ship of like being canon or liking their ship, they're going to try to start doing misinterpretations, mischaracterizations, slander, and all that stuff. This happened in the Naruto shipping community. And it's really kind of like sad to see that happen in many other communities as well. But that's essentially what the shipping community was like for at least the main group of ships. Other ships in the Naruto community were really small ones that included many of the supporting characters of Naruto, which I believe also was a little lacking in terms of like Masashi Kishimoto's writing. But there were many other ships that people actually enjoyed, such as, you know, Ino and Sai, even though there was like a small shipping war with Ino where it was like Ino Sakura, Ino Choji, Ino Shikamaru, you know, and Ino Sai, where they all fought each other for like to see who Ino will end up with. It was a smaller battle. It wasn't as hectic as the top 4, but it still existed between Ino as a supporting character and many other characters that she was more so involved in. But then you also had other characters that had really minor ships that not a lot of people had really much conflict with, such as Shikamaru Tamari, although Shikamaru shippers really fought each other over who he would end up with, either Ino or Tamari. But like, there were so many different ships that really were minor. They did have conflict, they did have shipping wars, but it wasn't as bad as like the top group. But that was essentially what the shipping community was like when, we have a bunch of characters and you have a bunch of shippers that were like really passionate about their characters and their favorite ship. It will cause this type of conflict. Now, Naruto did end, right? It ended back in 2014. Now, before I go into like what ships became canon at the end of Naruto and the aftermath of that chapter, which I saw and noticed just how, the shipping community reacted, I want to say, first off, there will be spoilers, so be very careful moving on from this video, especially if you have not finished Naruto. But when Naruto ended in 2014, 2013, essentially Kishimoto also confirmed many different pairings with the epilogue. Now, the main ship between the main trio that really won the shipping war was Naruto Hinata and Sakura and Sasuke. Both Naruto and Sakura and Naruto Sasuke ships unfortunately were dealt with a big loss because they spent so many time invested in these ships, and essentially they were disappointed that they did not get the win. So what happens with that is that when you lose, you tend to start delving into denial, or into the stages of denial where you constantly try to blame Kishimoto for choosing wrong, blame Kishimoto for, for picking the wrong ship, and trying every single avenue to try and find out why he chose them, why he was wrong in choosing this. Stages of denial, right? And it was constant when that final chapter came out, where people who lost in the shipping war just kept trying very hard to find some way to deny the reality that Kishimoto chose these ships. It happens, right? Denial happens. I have experienced through denial. I have experienced through hating a ship that actually won when my ship lost. I experienced that. It sucks. But one thing I learned is that you can continue shipping those ships regardless if they win or lose. That's part of being a fan. You're allowed to do a lot of this stuff because you're free to ship anything you want, as long as you accept the canon in the end. And that's very hard to do. I understand that, but accepting the canon at the end but continue to love whatever ship that you love is perfect for a fan to do. It's fine. You could continue writing fanfics. You could continue drawing fan art. It's perfectly fine. You could, criticize some of the writing. That's also fine. But accepting the canon at the end of the day is also perfectly fine. It's not going to diminish what you value and how much time you spend on the ship. Because at the end of the day, it is still a story. Yes, I understand wanting that canoncy is very important for shippers. But also, knowing that you can still ship your character is also equally as important in my personal opinion. But of course, not a lot of people view this the same way, and still to this day, there's a lot of people who constantly try very hard to deny what Kishimoto chose, right? And again, like I said, I was a Naruto Sakura shipper. I was not upset that Naruto Sakura did not become canon. I really wasn't, right? I accepted what Kishimoto chose and just moved on to another ship, to another franchise that I enjoyed shipping, right? It happens. This was one of my first L's that I took in terms of me being a shipper, and I'm perfectly fine with it, right? But that's just what the aftermath was. While Naruto, Hinata, and Sakura and Sasuke shippers were celebrating and are very happy about, Kishimoto confirming their ships, it's much easier to celebrate than it is to accepting the loss, right? I know it probably sounds like the most logical thing in the world that I just said, but it is. And, celebrating is fine as long as you don't, mock the losing ships, which unfortunately a lot of people do. So during shipping wars, a lot of times there's a lot of mocking, a lot of insults, a lot of like arguments throwing at each other, like slandering each other happen. And when a ship becomes canon, a lot of times people use that as a way to shit on the losing side. And that to me is just, it's wrong. We shouldn't do that, right? Because at the end of the day, they can still ship whoever they want. Yes, you won, but at least accept the win gracefully. But I get it. I also get it that you've been through a lot where a lot of people called you names and stuff like that. And you want revenge on that. I get that. And it's like, I don't know how to feel about it at the end of the day. I just know that if any of my ships win, I'm not gonna go at people, even though they would call me names and stuff like that. I'll just be like, yay, we won, congratulations, it feels so good. But everyone is different. I can't really judge how other people view shipping. Just know that I don't think slandering or like trying very hard to find reasons why your ship lost, you know, and that Kishimoto's wrong, and starting to slander Kishimoto himself or any author is not the best way to go about, you know, when you lose. Just be very careful on that. But essentially, that's what happened, right? I will say that out of all the ships in Naruto, I there was one that really got me off guard and confused, and that was who Choji wound up with, which I do not remember her name, and that is a big part of the problem because he ended up with someone where like a lot of people were just like, what, how, when did they interact, what, hey, it really was like that. That was one of the more confusing things I ever saw with like shipping in general. Like, how did a character end up with somebody that like they really didn't have any interactions? Like, when did that happen? We don't know. Maybe there was. Maybe I missed it. I don't know. But that was one of like a little trivia about like what it was like when Naruto ended and we saw who Choji ended up with. Like, it was very confused. Everyone was confused by that. So, but that was essentially what the shipping community was like in Naruto. I do think that Naruto's shipping war and community really started the trend of like how most shipping communities are in like later shonen series, but I can't really put it on them, you know. Initially, it's just that when Naruto became so popular in the West, a lot of people decided to become shippers because of it, and maybe that's how it all began. I do not know. That's just how I feel, so my opinion could be wrong, right? But again, the shipping community in Naruto was pretty hectic, pretty chaotic. It was a war, and the winners won. The losers, unfortunately, did not get their ship become canon. But again, like I've said in many other videos, you can still ship even if your ship is not canon. Accept the canon, but ship wherever you want. Continue to shipping wherever you want. Create fan art, write fan fiction. Because at the end of the day, if it brings you joy, if it brings you excitement and fun, go for it, right? Just don't go after the artist, the author, or other shippers just because you feel like they got it wrong. You know, like the author got it wrong. That it just makes you look bad at the end of the day. But again, congratulations to the people who won with their ship in Naruto. And yeah, thank you so much for watching my shipping video, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you on the next one. So thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.